with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun, host of Vancouver Island Time. I'm here with Bettina Plendl, Bettina Plendl Financial Divorce. How do you say it? Financial
Divorce Strategies.
Okay, and then Laurel Dietz of Alinea Legal Coaching. So sorry, I just have this issue. I don't know why, but YouTube keeps getting on here. So tell me what's going on with you guys. What have you noticed? We're in like week 7 or 8 or 30.
Forever.
I've had 3 inquiries in the past week from people who are looking to get separated or divorced. So I think that, there's some people are looking at each other and they're like, do I want to be with you? Are you finding that in your businesses? What about you, Laurel?
I'm finding that in my personal life, not for me, but for like friends and stuff. It's like I can see there's a lot of tension, right? And that's, I don't see it so much. I have clients who call me and I only ever have the one half, right? But I see that this lockdown has put a lot of pressure on people and their relationships. And people are all over the place. They're high one second and they're low the next. So it's really wild ride. In our business, we're getting lots of different calls. There was that initial sort of like lull where everybody was just in shock and no one could do anything. And then slowly things have been picking up for sure.
Yeah. How about you, Bettina?
Yeah, for sure. People wake up. I would call it like that. It's waking up to a new normal. Maybe in the morning, turning around and saying, "Yep, not gonna work much longer." Close quarters. I mean, we all need a haircut. I do for sure. I'm looking forward to that on a very personal note. But beyond that, it's. I'm pretty sure there's a few relationships which will change and which would need more than a haircut. Yes. The inquiries go up.
Oh, goodness.
So
people come back and, who were contemplating and say, "Yep, I'm done. I'm so done."
Right.
Yes.
So what about the DIYers? Those who, so they go, you know what? I just want to split 50-50, or, we came in, I brought this in, you brought this in. What sort of rights do people have? Should they be doing this on their own? Why use a lawyer? Why use a financial divorce specialist?
Good question. So, I mean, as we've talked many times on this show before, Jane, like my entire business is set up to help people DIY their own divorce. And the idea is that use legal help strategically. So pay for what you need and get guidance on what you need to do. The DIYers that make me very nervous, and I'll tell you why they make me nervous, are the ones who just go to the internet and they find there's a wealth of information out there about family law. And you can get as much information as you want, but there's no specific strategic advice. And there's no specific, like every case, every family is different. Every financial situation, while there's a lot of similarities, everything is slightly different. And so people just using that general information on the internet and trying to apply it to their own case are often overlooking probably some significant issues. And then the main thing, though, is maybe you can negotiate what you want to do after the end of your divorce. You know what your rights and responsibilities are, maybe. Let's say you figured out that much. Then what people like to do, this is where the DIYers make me nervous, is when they put together their own agreements.
Yeah.
I get calls all the time to get the advice on it and to witness their signature. And I just draw the line there because my advice is always going to be have your agreement properly drafted up. We can do that for you at a very reasonable price, at the fraction of a cost of what it will cost you when you realize that you've written something incorrectly in your agreement, and now there's significant tax consequences to you because you haven't properly recorded it. And
right.
It will cost you a lot more to go in and fix your agreement because now you're reopening an old wound. And there's going to be a lot more, once you get a lawyer digging around in there, things do get messier after you think you've settled it, and if you have to go back in, it's really a bad situation. So get it done properly the first time is the main thing I want to communicate.
Think of it as a tattoo on your body.
That's right.
You don't want
Exactly.
an amateur tattoo, right?
A
Yeah.
hurtful, a painful tattoo. But I think tattoos hurt. Yeah.
What about you for the finance side? Do you find people go through and they go, did they miss stuff, Bettina?
It's well, I could go on and on and on about the DIY people. I mean, there's a point to it, right? And I'm pretty sure maybe 5 out of, I don't know, 100,000 are really capable of doing it, and just for the simple reason how their relationship is set up. I mean, you're making a huge decision for the future of your life. With a person you decided you don't want to spend your life together anymore. You might have to because of the children, and you might be still very good friends. But it's just from a knowledge point of view. The one is maybe digging through the internet and finds articles. Will he share or she share everything she finds, which might not be in her or his favor? Point one. The other one needs to trust, but I would suspect that the trust is not 100% anymore. Because there's a reason for the breakdown of the relationship, and often it's either money, or it's cheating going on. So what I want to say, it's difficult to trust that person. Finding the information which is neutral enough or favors both, right? And then most often, I mean, you don't go as a couple to bring out the garbage. It's his or her job, and the other one does, I don't know, emptying out the dishwasher. I don't know. There's jobs nobody really likes to do. They need to be done. So we get into the habit. Typically, that's your job. That's my job. I do the cooking and grocery shopping. You do the cleaning and laundry. Something like that.
More
right?
specifically, Bettina, what you're saying is there's usually one spouse who handles all the finances, pays
Right.
the bills,
Yes.
manages
And
the investments, and the other spouse does the other stuff.
yes,
and that's
right.
right up your labor that way.
Yeah. And so the background level of knowledge on a lot of things is completely different, on many things, and you've got to learn a whole new setup of the other 50% often. And if it comes to the finances, it's even more like that, I find. And what I would like to avoid is the person who trusted kind of because of not knowing, avoiding down the road, if friends or someone, or reading something online, or becoming a bit more knowledgeable in the field. Oh crap, that was not right, what was done back then. It doesn't feel right, so let's look into it again. And then we're in the situation Laurel said. You roll up a very old matter which will haunt you, cost you a fortune, when you could have done it in the first place better. And then there's so many details to know. If you have 50,000 in a GIC, TFSA, non-registered, RRSP, cash in your bank account, it's not all the same 50,000. You need to consider some consequences, and you can't just.
Sorry to interrupt, Bettina, but I can say, as a lawyer who's dealt with a lot of these agreements, or people coming to me after the fact, because that happens, wanting to reopen their agreement, that's what they screw up they equate these financial instruments, and they sort of split them, and it doesn't end up being fair or equal.
Yes.
Got the right advice at the right time.
Yes, and it's often only based on the moment, right? Or done by the family's accountant who works more forensic, which is fine. It's often numbers from the past which will be brought forward. Sometimes it depends, but we also need to look into the future to make really a good decision. As yes, you can split everything what is in the pot, and that's the key, determining what is actually in the pot and what is on the table, what comes off, what needs to be adjusted by taxes or other things, exempt amounts. And then we can basically give several options how it might work for the individual family. You don't have to take each piece and cut it 50-50 if it doesn't benefit you at all. You can avoid a lot of costly financial mistakes by planning around it and what your individual future does. And yeah, so this is what I see.
Just smiling. Laurel, you're pixelating, so try not to move. I don't know.
Sorry.
Maybe it's your, I don't know.
I'm a fidgety person, I guess. I'm constantly moving. Yeah, I'll try not to move so much. But the one thing I want to add is just people who DIY going to court, which is, totally acceptable. A lot of people have to self-represent when they go to court, but you're going to save yourself a lot of grief and a lot of stress if you get some advice on how to do it and what to do. And I cannot stress that enough. I mean, I think people get beaten down by our justice system because they just don't understand the unwritten rules. And there's a lot of, there's a reason lawyers go to school for 3 extra years after university and then apprentice, for a year, article for a year with another lawyer, and then spend years crafting, working on their craft and practice. You learn a lot in that time. And so if you can take advantage of that by buying an hour or 2 of time and getting the advice you need, yes, you can do the DIY and you can do it better, but you cannot do it usually well enough just by going to YouTube or the internet for your information. You need a little bit more.
Right. So when I sold my own car a few years ago, I forgot to include the GST. So I had to eat $1,200 or something like that, and that's just like a small example of how people cheat themselves out of money. I have a question though. So what generally do people forget when, especially in finances, Bettina? What do they forget? Do they forget things like, air miles and little benefits?
That's my favorite. Yeah. We need to look at, for example, if let's say one of the spouses has an illness, and needs medication on a regular basis. It's as well Laurel's field, so it's between the money calculation and Laurel's field, in the sense of who needs to care about that. But if, let's say you're diabetic, I think I have no real insight, but I know it can be very expensive on a monthly base, and there might be something like a benefit plan through employment, right, on the other spouse's side. The kids will be, if there are kids, can still stay on with the other, with the mom or the dad, depending on their age, for how long and on the plan. But the spouse will come off, and now we have maybe $500 medical bills. Air miles is a pretty simple one, and anything else then, yet some people just are very loosey-goosey about pension plans. That is really not fair. You need to deal with it properly. You need an evaluation on it. If it's a defined benefit pension plan, as well, you're getting this, I'm getting this, and you need to look into the fine print. It's just, and it's not that complicated, it's by doing it properly, or just switching out dates, taking a financial statement. Oh, I can't find the right one, so I take the last, 2018, and our investments I take as of today because they really suck right now. They're down 30%. It doesn't work like that. And what I see as well, because we have a lot of self-employed people on the island, I just call them the John Doe's shop, with no employment, maybe contracted out. There's quite some things, typically business owners, the business pays for right off. We need to take that into consideration. There's a few things we need to talk about, right? Address it. It doesn't mean that there's fighting or anything. We just need to talk about it, as I'm all in favor for having all the information on the table. First thing to do is talking about the pot, what is in the pot, getting legal help here as a backup, and then let's look at it. How can we split it without making too many costly financial mistakes in the long run by taxes or whatever.
So Laurel, when to me it's a big disadvantage to go to court representing yourself because of all the legalese and the rituals around court. I mean, just when I go to court for foreclosures, I find there's a lot of spookisms.
There definitely are, especially in that area of law. There is. I think family law tends to be a lot more it's formal, but informal in the legal world, in the sense that we try to use plain language and less legalese, and a lot there. So, and because there's so many more self-represented litigants in family law than I think there would be in like a foreclosure or civil litigation. So I think that if you are on your own without the assistance of a lawyer, yes, you're at a significant disadvantage. But I would say with my clients, so I help guide people through the court process, and I've done so very successfully with many self-represented litigants. And so there's a way to do it properly. And part of it involves actually having a cold, hard look at your own motivations and what you're after and what your intention is, right? So you're not going after unreasonable things, that you're only using court if you absolutely need it, not because, you're angry.
Right.
And that when you're doing it properly. And it's almost like there's a rule for lawyers, there's a rule, and there's different rules almost for self-represented litigants than there are for people with lawyers. And so you need to have a sense of how you're going to be treated. And I can guide people and say, look, this is because I've been doing this with other people for a while now. I know that this is what's going to likely happen to you, and this is what you need to prepare for. And it's going to court is about preparation. You're going to spend 90% of your time preparing yourself, and then there'll be a 10% in front of the judge or whatever, and before you know it'll be over. And so you really need to make that 10% count, and that's through doing all the preparation.
Yeah, I find that too when, like in real estate negotiating, that if I say to people, okay, here's what's going to happen, here's our offer coming in, and then here are the typical responses we're going to get, and then you're going to have to make a decision which way you want to go then. Is that how you are coaching them?
Yeah, so it really depends. So if I'm dealing with Supreme Court, let's say, because that's where it gets more complicated than in provincial court, we're doing like a lot of the paperwork. So we're spending, let's say you have an application you want to have before the judge, we're starting our preparation months in advance. And so we're getting all the paperwork just perfect, just the way we want it. And then we're going to be waiting for the response. We're going to be really talking about, okay, one, like this is what your legal issue is. This is, and understand your legal rights and responsibilities. Make sure we're asking for the right thing. We'll see what their response is. And once we know what their response is, we'll do some more preparation so that when you're in front of the judge, like if this happens, you know that you can do this, this, and this. If this happens, you can go this way, EFG.
Right.
So yeah, I guess what you say is you have to really think of all the possible outcomes and come up with potential solutions.
Do you use the data from someone like Bettina in court?
I haven't had a need to yet. I mean, I use Bettina's services with my clients more so that we can avoid going to court. But I have had a file where I think that if I had a litigation client, I might send them to Bettina. So for an example on excluded property, right? People don't realize when they, maybe they bought a property 15 years ago, then they got together with their spouse 10 years ago. Now they're splitting up, but they have no record of how much the house was worth 10 years ago and how much can they keep out of that house. So what I would do is it's up to the person who's asking for this property to come back to them. Sort of the equity in their property that it was at 10 years ago. It's up to them to prove that that's how much it was. And if they don't have any of the documents or anything to show, I might go to Bettina to say, well, maybe you can put something together and we'll try to make a case. I don't know if that would be effective. So I'd look into the case law a little bit more on that. But I think that's where I would start trying to make my case if I didn't have the paperwork. It's
a good idea anyway to do a market analysis anytime you add somebody into the house or when you go away or you move, or like there's lots of times when I think you should have an appraisal or a market analysis.
I'd agree with that for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So how are the DIYs in your court, Jane?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I wrote an article about that. It's interesting because when things are tight, people will try and go for DIY, and often what they'll do is they calculate what they think the realtor's commissions are, and then they'll deduct that in their negotiating. But what the problem is not the often not the money. There's all sorts of terms and conditions. So I had a client who was interested in a property actually in Duncan, and I called up the guy. It was for sale by owner, and I said, I have a client who's interested. And he told me, he said, I have an offer. And he told me the terms of the offer, and I was like, I can't even believe that someone would accept that. I don't think he couldn't have gone to a lawyer. And he certainly didn't ask a realtor, because the terms and conditions were so much to the benefit of the buyer that the realtor wrote in the contract that the seller really suffered. And, I don't know. I think often it depends on how savvy you are and how familiar you are with the market. But there was a post recently in my community about buying and selling, and this lady revealed her motivation about why she wanted to sell. And then she said, I've had 2 realtors come in. I know what the value of the property is. And this particular lady, actually, I didn't know, but this is a series of different posts that people were putting in. And I'm like, oh my God, like you are just giving it all away. Someone's going to come in and take advantage of you. And I think the one thing that a realtor does is really, they are your agent. And if you have a great agent, an agent means somebody who's representing you and looking out for your best interests, that you're going to end up further ahead. Do you guys want to know how the market's doing?
You sure do.
Sure.
Okay, let me just move it over. So
what I wanted to say about the DIYs, right? No matter what, I mean, we're dealing, if it's separation or divorce or selling a house, we don't do that every day. Even if we do it more than once, the things have changed, the rules and regulations. So I don't know, I don't get it why people on such an important transaction in their life would cheap out on it.
Sometimes they do it just for, I think they just do it for convenience.
Okay.
I think so. I think they get nervous about getting lawyers involved, right? Because they feel like it's going to make things more adversarial. And in some way, they're probably right. But
well, you gotta pick the right lawyer.
Find the right lawyer who's not going to make your life more miserable, right? You need to find someone who's willing to be a solution finder instead of a problem causer.
And some people are savvy, like they've either come from the field or, they maybe are moving from, like I find funny is when you have a realtor who moves from Ontario. I've had this happen where they're asking me all about the neighborhoods, and then they go and buy a property on their own. And, you just sort of think, okay, well, I'm professional. I'm not surprised that you would do that. But it happens more often than you think.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's to their advantage. Anyway, okay, so year over year, we are at 2,447 listings, and that's compared to 3,019 last year at this time. In terms of new listings, since the beginning of May, we've had 600. That's compared to 1,600 for the month of May. So we're a little less than half what we were. So we're about 80%. And then net unconditional. Pardon?
I said still pretty good considering,
Yeah, we've had 230 sales this month so far, and that's compared to 848 in May of last year. So I was saying to Bettina earlier, like our list to sale ratio is still pretty good. It's about 50% if you just look at it raw numbers. Obviously, it depends on where you're going to live and purchase and what you're looking for. The market's always going to be hotter downtown Victoria, and then it goes off as you go out. But it's always price sensitive. If you want to sell your home and you're motivated, just price it well. It'll sell in any market. People need to buy and sell home.
So how are the days on market? I mean, I'm in Nanaimo. I think our houses are on the market a bit longer. Or is there do you see a difference between North and South Island or Central Island? How days on market?
I don't have that data here in front of me right now, but I could look it up for you and I'll post it, let you know. But I think last month it was 30 days, which isn't that long.
No,
No,
that's
I mean,
actually really good.
compare to a few years ago where it was 2 or 3 days.
Okay, well, yeah. The markets have changed.
But the other thing is so in this post that that I was referring to on the weekend, this lady was saying, well, you know, why would you go with a realtor, because you're not going to have time to do your conditions. And I'm like, what kind of market are you thinking of? Because this is to me, it's a balanced market moving towards a seller's market a bit, as the number of listings come up. And so buyers I mean, nobody wants you to buy a property without you being happy with it, and nobody wants you to take a risk. So definitely we would negotiate reviewing the title, getting a property inspection, looking at any sort of weird things on the property, like maybe going into further investigation with a well or septic, or if we need to get specialists in, depending on the age of the home, for mold or asbestos. I had those all written into a contract recently. So these are all normal conditions, and a good realtor, what they'll do is they'll figure out what the sort of species of the house is, and then what clauses you need to include in order to protect you as a buyer. And same thing as a seller.
Yeah.
You're looking, like what you were saying, Laurel, probably you know what different judges are like and what they're willing to negotiate on. And same thing with us as a listing realtor and buyer realtor. We're looking at the realtor as well as the.
That's true. I imagine you guys all have your inner sort of real estate circles, and you all know each other. And you have probably better relationships with some than others, and you just have a rapport, I imagine. I mean, that's the way it is with lawyers. So it really makes a difference if you are, I guess, working on a file with someone you have a good rapport with versus someone you don't.
Well, you know, it's funny because I do a lot of transactions. So I've worked with some people who at the end they've been like, you're really easy to work with. Well, yes, because I want to make it work. But I've worked with difficult people, buyers, sellers, realtors. It's amazing how much your personality influences your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes, for sure.
Speaking of which, come here, Chris. Hold on a second. Come here.
What?
Show everybody what you've got on your face. This is funny. Come on over here. Speaking about partners. You guys show me a full face mask. So, all right. So, any further comments you guys want to make? This was a good meeting today.
Yes. Yes. And on a funny note, I think dividing up garbage correctly is challenging as well. If you've never done it, you've got to learn it.
Dividing up garbage?
No, because we talked about it earlier.
Yes, the dividing up the household chores. Yeah.
Yes.
We call them pink and blue jobs. I'm the pink. My husband's the blue.
Yeah. No. I think you need to know your stuff, and if you go through that, you figure out, oh, I don't know everything. So and that's exactly with whether you sell a house or get separated or divorced. You just don't know your stuff. So ask a lawyer, ask a realtor, ask people who know it, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much unbundled, and people will share what they know with you, right? It's not that we are asking for a huge retainer and things and bill every breath we take.
Mm-hmm.
It's people, I think, need to understand that there's a justification why we do what we do, because we like it, we enjoy it, and we are the expert. We do it for a living.
Yeah, and you know what you don't know. They don't know that.
Yeah, they don't know what they don't know. Yeah.
Okay,
It's true.
awesome. So let's talk next week. If you guys have anything, if you are co-parenting, you're getting separated or divorced, and you have a specific question, just send us a note. We'll answer it next week on our session at 4:30 on Community Talks. All right. Have a great day, you guys, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.